We're at Gen Con 2017 celebrating 50 years of the best 4 days of gaming there is. I'm at the Paizo booth talking their brand new role-playing game with Jason Keeley. So first, I guess describe what the new game and what people can expect.
Okay, well, our new game is called Starfinder. It's a science fantasy style game. So it's got aliens, but it's also and lasers, but it's also got wizards and well, not exactly wizards, but magic and spells and stuff like that. It is an offshoot of our Pathfinder role-playing game, which is D20 based, but it's standalone completely. If you can get your hands on the core rulebook, you can play it just right out of the box. You just need the dice and players and pencils and whatnot. And it's got we focused on some new races, all new classes. All sorts of things, and we've included a new system for starship combat, and it's sort of a system to build your own starship, to customize it and get all the goodies you want, depending on what level you are.
So, I mean, the games was, I think, teased months ago, quite a while ago, and it's just making its debut here. Like, how long has it actually been in the works?
We sort of announced it, I believe, at PaizoCon 2016, right? And it had been in the works a bit before that. We had to make sure we could do it and stuff like that. So, but basically, for the whole, I would say for at least for the whole of 2016, there were a lot of us just heads down, focused on getting it out there for at least some playtesting, and then working on all the things, how we want to change it. Let's get all the math right and all that sort of thing. So it's been over a year. It's sort of bubbling up, but it's a super concentrated year of people just really working their butts off.
So with the game, I mean, it's from everything I've read. I haven't played it yet. It seems to be just like a translation of the Pathfinder rules, slight twist to it. Did you find yourselves at all like tweaking the original rules, maybe like fixing some stuff here and there?
Oh yeah, we did a lot of streamlining because we wanted to sort of take a step of complexity out to sort of make the game a little more friendly to new players who never touched a role-playing game before, and people who haven't touched Pathfinder before, essentially, right? So we took some. I can get into some of the nitty-gritties here, but we took down like things like iterative attacks with when your base attack bonus gets high enough, you just get an extra attack if you make a full attack. We just sort of took that out. Everyone's just sort of got this sort of straight base attack bonus progression. But anyone, even at level 1, if you want to try to make 2 attacks in one round, you certainly can. You just take a big penalty to each one. We got rid of the number of things that provoke attacks of opportunity, for one thing. All of our spellcasting classes go up to 6th level instead of 9th level. So there's a lot of sort of streamlining and that doesn't mean we won't maybe go up to 9th level with some spellcasting later on. But just for core, we did a lot of streamlining. We streamlined sort of the character creation process in terms of how you make your ability scores and that sort of thing.
So there's a couple things that I think of when I think of the company and I think of Pathfinder, one of which is the community. Mm-hmm. When putting this together and designing things, like how much did you actually engage the community to get their feedback?
We did a sort of more of a closed playtest for this one because we had such a short development cycle that we couldn't necessarily send it out to the entire community at large. Which if we were to do some of that, we would just basically want to do that for at least a year. Just sort of get all that feedback, because it'd be way the feedback, and then coordinating it. But we kept from announcement. People were talking about it, so we kept our ear out there on our message boards and in other places and go what do people want? How do people like? What kind? It's just things that we can tweak while we're in the midst of it that might come from that. So we kept our ear to the ground for sure.
I mean, the other thing I think of when I think of Pathfinder is emphasis on diversity, inclusiveness. Was that kind of part of the thought coming up with this game? I mean, it's in space, a little bit different than the real world, makes things much more open, but also science fiction is really good at having or doing commentary on life and social issues. Yeah,
definitely. We definitely wanted to keep the inclusivity of the Pathfinder in there, right? So we talk a lot about how, for our android race, for instance, right? Yeah, so they're constructed people, and back in while they sort of were constructed to have a sort of male or female gender identity from their shell, but they don't reproduce that way. So that means nothing to a lot of them. So a vast number of them are genderless, essentially, right? And that's how they identify, and they sort of cast aside this sort of male male-female dichotomy. And then we've got other things to sort of like to do the thing that sci-fi does, which is not to do the exact analog, but like we have a race of bug people, and they have 3 genders because one of them is host, sort of for the biological reasons. But then it's like we maybe get into what that sort of means, and we've got sort of throwaway references to alien races that have multiple genders or no gender and stuff like that. And then definitely in the process of wanting to explore that when it makes for interesting stories.
Obviously there's tons of science fiction out there, been past games, stuff like that. Like, were there any that you can admit to that were kind of maybe influences, stuff that you all loved that we're thinking about, not necessarily that you worked off of, but kind of here's the things that we loved that kind of went into this?
I mean, we have just 2 pages of our just sort of general influences: books, movies, TVs, other games, and that sort of thing. Of course, Shadowrun is a big influence. We wanted to sort of like be able to do that sort of Shadowrun stuff every once in a while, but not make it as grim as Shadowrun. It's just sort of more space opera, which of course keeps us in mind of Star Wars and all the Star Wars games that we played. In fact, Owen Casey Stevens was one of the main people working on the rules. He worked on the Star Wars Saga edition, so he probably if he didn't learn anything from that, he's a fool. Hi Owen, he brought a lot of those lessons in, and we we have a vast array of people who just cull from all of their influences. The Expanse, or for me, it would be like Farscape, that sort of stuff. We wanted this, and we kind of, as much as we could, sort of pushed that all together and mushed it all up.
So, you have played a few RPGs, sci-fi RPGs in the past. One of the things that always got to me is going to the individual play into like ship combat. It got rather complicated. It felt like a totally different game. When designing this, since you basically were coming from scratch with it, was that kind of on your mind? Was that things that you tried to tackle to make it a bit more, ease?
Yeah, one of the things that does come up in a lot of these sort of like when you have this sort of ship-to-ship combat, it also becomes one player doing everything, right? And we definitely wanted to move away from that as much as we could. So Jason Bullman sort of took a bunch of other things like some others, I can't remember the name of it exactly, some Star Trek Bridge Commander or something along those lines, games like that, and sort of put them all in his mind blender and just sort of mixed them up, and came out with this sort of system that is definitely, it's different from the combat you'll have from character to character because it takes place, for one, on a hex grid instead of a square grid, right? And spacing is important, which way your ship is facing, but most importantly, everybody on the ship has something to do. Right, so you get on there. You've got the pilot, obviously. You've got people to fire the guns. You've got a science officer. You've got engineers to fix things when they get broken. You've got someone basically being the captain who can be like, "You're doing a great job. Hey, good," and give people bonuses. So everyone's got something to do every round, and the rounds kind of go pretty quickly, right? So it's got enough complication into sort of like there's lots of interesting choices every round that you can make, but it isn't so you have to worry about like vectors and 3-dimensional space and all that stuff.
You're basically creating a world out of this. You had the Pathfinder system to kind of work off of, but at the same time, one's a planet type of thing, and then you've got space, which could be multiple planets, infinite amount of planets, stuff like that. I feel like you're kind of going from a finite thing to an infinite thing in a weird possibilities of stories and stuff like that. When tackling something like that, designing a game, how do you not go too crazy with that and actually keep it to like a reasonable thing? Because it's a little bit different in that you have infinite space. Right,
exactly. But the good thing about the game is that it also has magic in it, so we kind of can go crazy. So we can, if we want to, throw a planet out there that is it's donut shaped, but it also has weird gravity, and for some reason half the planet is psychic and the other half isn't, but they can always read each other's minds. We can go a little crazy on some of these concepts, and we don't have to. We're not that. We want to keep it in a lot of ways realistic when it's like, well, a planet this size should have about this kind of gravity or this mass, or if it has this kind of mass. So we keep that in mind, but we're also educatable. Go like, hey, there's this black hole out there, and there's this space station that, because of magic, it can kind of hover right there, just at the edge of the accretion disk or something like that, and do studies. And then, hey, that's a great place to have an adventure because something goes wrong, and maybe you might get sucked into the black hole. So it is again, like you said, an infinite sort of canvas, which is definitely something that is definitely fun to work with, and a bit of like give that also to the GMs and the players, and be like, where do you want to go? If you don't have to stay in our solar system, which is we do give some good detail and the history of it and all the different planets. There's lots of different places to go there. You might not ever leave that, but if you want to go someplace else, head out, make up a planet of your own, go crazy.
I mean, you kind of you touched on it literally. You now have to deal with like maybe gravity or different things. So how much does the system actually go into these things? Because it feels like, again, there's just way more factors of going intergalactic than on a planet.
Yeah. Well, we give you the tools when you want to use them. We don't have to force you to necessarily worry about zero-G combat if that's not what you want to do in the game. But we give you the tools that if you want to do one of those encounters, maybe every so often, you certainly can. We talk about a lot of different types of environments that you might find out in space itself, and then all the different kinds of planets. But we give you space suits pretty early on. So the places you can go compared to, say, a fantasy setting are kind of widened. You don't necessarily have to worry too much about different atmospheres and different gravities unless you really want to, and that becomes important to the story, or until your spacesuit's power runs out.
What had you choose to do a whole new game as opposed to like a hardcore sci-fi setting for Pathfinder?
Oh, you mean to do a science fantasy sort of thing? Yeah, well, we wanted to sort of... we put a lot of work... in the past, Paizo's put a lot of work into the Galarian setting, right? And we kind of wanted to talk about... And we have, in the past, sort of expanded out of that in the Pathfinder, talking about the other sort of planets. So we have this galaxy. Let's just sort of move the timeline forward. It seemed to be this sort of like... We're all familiar with it. We don't have to necessarily make up everything from scratch. We sort of know, there once was, Galarian, and then we've got a couple of these moons and this, couple gas giants out there and their asteroid belt. So we could definitely made it a little easier since we had to come up with, they'll do a lot of the rules tweaks to make the D20 system work for a science fiction game. Put in laser guns and cryo guns and electricity guns and all sorts of things like that. For folks who are fans of the Pathfinder game, I'm going to guess playing this, maybe there might be like little things they might notice that a new person might not. Like, are there like call-outs and little Easter eggs in the system that longtime fans might enjoy? Oh, definitely. There's definitely, the main setting happens that Galarian, the system where the Pathfinder is gone, right? In its place is a space station called Absalom Station. And those familiar with the Pathfinder setting will know that Absalom is a city that's very cosmopolitan, sort of in the middle of the inner sea itself. And they'll recognize that name. And there's lots of other sort of call-outs to people know that there's a Pathfinder Society, there's a Starfinder Society as well. Well, those don't necessarily, you're not going to see exact NPCs from Pathfinder to Starfinder, but you might get a hint or two in the name, or just a statue or something like that you might see in the background. And we've got also sort of every occasional other Easter eggs to other small, tiny little Easter eggs to other science fiction properties, but I won't call those out. You'll be able to find them.
Final question: being able to do something brand new and really having the world open to you, like as game creators, like how does that feel as opposed to expansion for Pathfinder? Like you could do anything with this.
No, yeah, it's great to think about to how we're going to work on these, for instance, the adventure paths that we're going to be doing. What kind of stories were you going to be able to tell? You can tell different types of stories in a science fiction game than you can in a fantasy game. Stuff about transhumanism or the what's that word? Convergence? That sort of thing. Are we going to go on to tell those sorts of stories? Who knows? It's exciting to think about what's going to happen. So, again, yeah, it's a little daunting, but it's definitely very exciting.
Well, I appreciate you talking.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. Now, what you can do that would be really helpful is subscribe or visit our website. We've got links right here that makes this super easy. By subscribing, you will make sure to get further videos down the road. And of course, visiting the website, you get all the greatest news. But just watching, we really, really appreciate it. Until next time, keep rolling those dice and keep it geeky.